Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana, but just Blair, but also Lou. I am so excited about today's guest. Lou Bowers is a British Columbia-based visibility expert with over a decade of experience in marketing, small businesses, and 4 years of specializing in elevating other people's brands. She's successfully guided a range of ventures from soap making, goat farm, and two gift shops to a parenting coach business, showcasing her diverse skill set and deep understanding of what it's like to gain traction in competitive markets. Her experience has been featured in different groups, different media outlets, and she's going to be an author in the forthcoming book, Resilient AF Stories of Resilience Vol.2. She's a creator of a networking group in Kamloops, British Columbia called Networking at Night. And I am so honored that she is here today because she started off as a friend and we've just done some really cool collaborations together. And she's a visibility expert. And it's just so profound because we're going to talk today about her experience from being a glass child, which is the complete opposite of visibility. And so, Lou, hi.
Hi, I love this. I love listening to my bio and being like, oh yeah, that is me.
It is you. You're
Right.
visible.
Right? Because legit to tell you the truth, I'm like business on the top, sweatpants on the bottom right now. So
Well, I'm not even wearing a bra, so it's fine.
fantastic,
The camera's
fantastic.
positioned. If you're
Yeah.
listening, you can't see, but the camera is positioned. But just in case I am wearing a branded shirt, I'm wearing one of our Dead Parent Society shirts available on our store. You know, the club that no one wants to join, that I'm unfortunately a part of. But yeah, your bio is epic because you are epic. And today we're going to talk about your experience as a glass child. And to be honest, I mean, I didn't even know that was a term until you and I sat down to talk about it. And I think this is the perfect place to have a dialogue about what your experience was like before your sibling came into the picture, what your experience as a glass child was when you were a child and where you are today. So let's dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna zoom forward a little bit though. Like I didn't even know what a glass child was until I was in my late 30s. And so when when that term came up and I was like, holy cow, like it just some people when they like get ADHD diagnosis later in life, like something just clicks, and that's what clicked for me, right? Like that was like that's why I am who I am, and also like just yeah, why I do what I do. So
Immediately, I just want to say immediately, your name is so brandable. I'm picturing the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland instead of going, "Who are you?" Going, "Who is Lou?" And the fact that you got this piece to the puzzle in your 30s to really put together who you are is really beautiful because it allows you to, kind of paint that whole picture.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, but I don't really remember life before my sister Julie was born. I was 2.5 when she came on the scene. So, yeah, I don't really recall life before that. And then uh, she was a crying, cranky baby, as many babies are, but she also didn't gain weight. She had um, extreme diarrhea. She was a sick baby. And we didn't know, my parents didn't know what was wrong with her. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with her. And then when she was 2, she was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, which means that her body didn't produce enzymes for digestion, hence the extreme volcano diarrhea. And she also developed a really thick, thick coating of mucus in her lungs, which made her super prone to things like pneumonia and other bronchial infections and that sort of thing. So, yeah, and she spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital. My parents spent a lot of time learning new drugs and therapies for her. And I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house and uh, the neighbor's house and staying in various houses where I was safe, but I was also um a guest. I wasn't home. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And how, because you were 2.5, so there a point where you could remember back to? Because if, Julie was not well, it wasn't just a
Um,
one-time occurrence, right? So,
No, no, it was consistent. So I can remember I was probably, I'm gonna say between 6 and 8, maybe. And I remember, oh, actually, let's go back a little bit further than that. I remember being 4 years old and I still have the scar. I burnt my hand on our wood stove in the living room and I hid it. So if you can imagine, and I mean, I still have the scar. It was a pretty significant burns, but you can imagine this little 4-year-old girl who knew that her parents already had enough to deal with. So
oh, that's so
me burning my
sad.
hand was not something that I was going to tell them about. Eventually, they noticed, and I couldn't hold back the tears. But I sat in the corner and held my hand and just let the tears fall. I didn't make a sound. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really sad. And like also being 4 and having that awareness that your parents, you perceived your parents' capacity to be full with Julie. So I think maybe before we go a little further, like I think this is a good place to define like what is a glass child and what was it about this definition that you related to that you knew this was you?
So a glass child is a child who has a sibling with high medical needs. Um, and essentially, what happens is not through any intention from the adults around that child, but simply because they have to pour so much energy into the ill child, the sick kid. The glass children often their needs are put to the side.
Mhm.
Or they learn how to meet their needs at a very young age and they grow up very fast. And yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so you're 4, you remember burning your hand. You were about to share a story from when you were maybe 6.
Right. Yeah. So at that point, my sister was staying in Children's Hospital in Vancouver. And my grandma and I were also in Vancouver staying with a cousin. And we had left the cousin's house to go to a great aunt's house. There was like just family everywhere. And the great aunt had this like cool old rambling farmhouse and these donkeys, and like it was the best house ever until nighttime came along. And I was like, I don't want to stay in this creepy old farmhouse with the
Yeah.
donkeys making weird noises outside
Oh my
anymore.
God. It was like
Um,
foreshadowing for your future.
right. Yeah, we'll get into the goat farming later, but so I actually told one of the adults, and I can't remember which one it was, but I told one of the adults in the kitchen, like, I want my grandma to come back and get me. And they must have known something was up with me because they were like after my grandma got there, they were like congratulating me kind of for speaking up and telling them what I needed. So I think they kind of saw what was happening in my childhood. And then were like, I just remember they were really proud of me for asking for what I wanted in that moment. And I was, yeah, it's kind of looking back now, it's very monumental of like, holy cow, other people saw it too. Like, and it's
So,
validating to know other people saw it too, right?
and I think that's actually really profound because you were 2.5 when Julie was born. You're maybe around
Hmm.
6. So that's about 4 years. I'm bad at math, but ish. And so for 4 years, you took this back seat
Hmm.
and you finally found your voice or the courage that you needed to speak up. Do you think that moment changed how you showed up in all the situations?
Um, I think it was definitely like a first step, but it was kind of like 2 steps forward, 4 steps back kind of deal. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Wow, I can't even imagine what that would be like. I only have one sister and she didn't neither of us had complex medical needs. We had a different family situation, with having a single mom raising us. But you have other siblings too?
Yep, I have a younger sister. Heather is 9.5 years younger than me.
And what was life like when she came along?
Um, it just rolled. She came along. My mom, how was that? I remember when Heather came along, she has a different dad. And my mom was in a very transitional point in her life. So it was when my mom actually told us it was in the car, she had picked us up from Brownies and she said, I'm going to have a baby. And I remember I just laughed because she must be joking right now. Like, that's not going to happen. But it did. And yeah, Heather just kind of rolled as well. So yeah, she just rolled into all the rest of it. And
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I'm gonna ask like a bit harder of a question
Mhm.
because Julie was so sick. How long was Julie with us?
Julie died in 2005 when she was 20.
So, do you think that whole time while she was alive, because that means you were like 22 or 23.
Yep, I was 22.
So, for those 20 years, do you feel like you were a glass child that entire time?
Yes, yeah. I actually, when Julie was in the ICU and when she was in a coma and that sort of thing, and my parents were at the hospital and my grandparents and other family, and I remember thinking, when she passes, my parents are going to stop loving me because they will not have the capacity for that.
I wish I could just hug you right now. And that's a really natural thought. What I know, we were talking about your experience as a glass child, but I think this is actually really important because there's life with Julie and then life after Julie passed away.
Right. Yeah. It's like, there's moments in life that are before and after moments, right? And
Hmm.
that's definitely one of them for sure.
And what was life like after Julie passed away with your parents?
It was actually the opposite of what I thought it would be. My dad um invited me out to dinner for probably the first oh, week or two at least afterwards. And yeah, actually, my parents had been divorced for a really long time when Julie passed. And we actually went to my dad and my stepmom's house and had like this big circle group therapy thing that happened. And just, yeah, it was a lot different than I thought it would be.
Wow. That must have been really also interesting, like from your parents' perspective. I mean, but I can't imagine what it's like to lose a child, to have a sick child. I mean,
Right.
I can't even, I could even carry a baby to term. Like, I can't even imagine what it's like. I can't, like, there's a whole layer to children, and let alone things happening in not the right, like, order that, we think should happen, where the parents die before the child
Yeah.
and you bared witness to your parents experiencing something that's considered out of order, out of natural order. Um, I don't know if you've talked to them about what your feelings are or experiences as a glass child. Have you, or even Heather, like, have you guys, any of you talked about it? Like, I mean, I think it's just
So,
a curious conversation because I bet you there's people listening out here who it's so relatable that they're learning what this term is today at this very moment. And they might be like thinking, how do I navigate this?
yeah, yeah. I don't talk about it with my parents very much. I found that it makes my dad really uncomfortable to even kind of talk about Julie. And then when we talk to my mom, we tell stories and that sort of thing, but I don't really talk about my experience growing up and having my mom as my mom in that
Yeah.
situation, right? But yeah, Heather and I definitely talk about it. I think I think actually I sent her a text afterwards. I was like, "Oh my God, we're glass children." I was like, "This is what we are."
Yeah.
Like, does
Wow.
this resonate with you too? And so, yeah.
And like
Yeah.
learning about being a like okay, so I'm gonna transition to like your experience as an entrepreneur, goat farmer, visibility expert, but to kind of like transition into that, I want to know, you discovered in your 30s
Hmm.
the term and what you were. How do you think that like I don't know if it's a diagnosis, but that definition of like the way you felt, putting words to it, how do you think that helped with your visibility and with you stepping forward into the next phase of your life?
I think two things happened. Um, so like, when you're in therapy and they're like, name your emotions, and then it just, sorry, I'm new to bangs.
They look great.
When you're in therapy and they're like, name your emotions, and when you name it, it doesn't, it like brings it into the light and it gives it not so much power. Like when you're just raging angry and you can be like, I am raging angry, it just
Yeah.
brings it down like three different levels, right? And I think that, naming something, because I was chasing people to love me and to see my worth, right? And to meet my needs, and I didn't know how to flat out ask to have my needs met. I knew how to like sneak or, be passive aggressive about what I needed, but I didn't know
Hmm.
how to actually say, I need XYZ. Can you help me? Um, and that changed after that. Like it was like, okay, I see that and I see why that's happening. And then it also brought, like, because it brought back some of the grief, like the deep, heavy grief of Julie dying, right? And it made me think, I don't necessarily want to live my life hustling to have my needs met. So I started, and it didn't like nothing happened magic wand or anything like that, right? It just kind of was like a thought process that built like a snowball, and then through a lot of work plunked me where I am now.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful because it's like it opened up this realm of possibilities for you to be in this like next level of existence. And when you found that out, because I know you have children, you
Hmm.
have the children's father who at once was your husband.
Yeah.
Where in finding out that you were a glass child, you are a glass child, not were, because you are still are.
Uh-huh.
You are a glass child. In your life were you? Like, did you have kids? Were you still married? Like, what was happening in your life when you found this out?
Yeah. When I found this out, I had four kids. I still have four kids. Um, I didn't send any of them back. Um, I had four kids and I was essentially living the RV life. We were traveling in our motorhome um extensively. We were all over the province. And just really exploring where we'd also my kids were homeschooled at that time, and we had been on some really big trips, like month-long trips to Europe and that sort of thing. So there was a lot of travel happening in my life
Mhm.
then. Um, yeah.
And do you think learning this impacted the choices you made in relationships moving forward?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, I it was a goal of mine to travel and experience and do all
Mhm.
those things, right? Like I want to live this big full life. And then when I was on the road, I realized it was really lonely. Like I did not have my people and my community around me. Um, and I recall the time that I spoke up and said, like, it's too much for me right now.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go on this next trip. Um, that was a big deal. That was scary, right? To have just my husband and kids go on a trip without me. That had never happened in my life, and I didn't even know what to do with myself. Like I had an hour-long shower and cried because I just didn't know what to do with myself, or if I was making a mistake, or if my whole life was just going to fall apart. Um, but I also knew that like I just could not experience the loneliness and exclusion. What is it? I don't know, the word will come later, but like that, just that isolation that comes with living in an RV and
Yeah.
traveling around. So yeah.
And good for you for standing up for what you wanted to do. And that does sound scary, but also very liberating once you kind of lean into this new feeling, right? And speaking up for yourself is huge.
Right.
And we don't have, I mean, I wish we had hours. Maybe you and I have endless amounts of time, but not on this podcast. So, while that's all happening, you've had various careers. At one point, you and your family, were living on a farm. You're a goat farmer. There's, articles out there of you milking a goat while pregnant. You made soap. You had a business group for moms. You were coaching parents, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And now you're a visibility expert. So how do you think like the career transition? Because I think the goat milking was before you learned you were a glass child to stepping
Yes.
into being a full visibility expert, and standing in the like power of the lessons you've learned as being a glass child. Like what has that been like for you? And let's talk like kind of dive into that because that's a pretty big like arc from like making soap to helping people be seen.
Right. I think again, like when, as things evolved and especially stepping into like parent coaching, right? So, and helping people, I mean, my tagline was, I help you not lose your shit on your kids.
Yeah.
So, just stepping into that and figuring out like, what does it really take to actually help people in that capacity. And then, in the life pivot of getting divorced, I had to look at what are my skills and what can I do. And I love spreading that message of, you are the one who is going to show up for you.
Mm.
And you have to choose that. You are worthy of that, but you have to show up and you have to tell people what you do. And, in order to live big and successfully, you need to get it out there. And it's not a one and done thing. You have to continuously show up. And I've learned a lot about consistency and how, when you have a daily habit of showing up for your business, showing up for yourself, um, things just get so much better. Like
Yeah.
when you show up and you're seen and you take up that main character role in your life, oh my God, the things that shift. So yeah, it's big when you show up for yourself. And I get to help people do that. And that's a dream come true that I didn't even know I had. So
Oh, oh, love it. And you have a gift. So not everyone that listens is like in the world of business, but if you're curious about this and you're not in business, that's cool. Or if you're in business, you have a gift for everyone called the All Eyes on You, which is a jam-packed guide full of ideas to get more visibility for your business and step into the spotlight. So that link is in the show notes, all of your website, your social handles. Everything you need to know about Lou is in the show notes. So I invite you to connect with her, follow her, learn to be visible. If you're curious about even what her experience is as a glass child, if this is resonating, it might be an advantage to reach out to her because she could probably help you start to be seen. And it doesn't just have to be in the world of business. So, I mean, there's so much that we can keep talking about, but I think a really beautiful place to end would be what advice do you have for someone who is just learning that they are a glass child?
um, really step into your worthiness and know that that is a process because it doesn't, like, the first time you think, I am so worthy of living life fully, your brain goes, haha, just kidding. But like just really being consistent, back to being consistent and showing up for yourself and learning how to trust yourself is huge in that.
Beautiful advice. Lou, you're amazing. I see you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being a guest with us today on Resilient AF.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in for another episode of Resilient AF. Oh my gosh. You want to learn more about us? Go to our website, theglobalresilienceproject.com. You want to be more inspired? Check out our other episodes of our podcast. You can buy our books. on our website. You can just dive right in. And, life is beautiful, but also there are some very dark, challenging moments, and it's easy to feel alone when you're going through it. So just know that you are not alone. You have us. We will hold your hand through the darkest hour. It is okay to not be okay. You got this, my friends. You are resilient AF. That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are resilient AF.